The silence of the African savanna was shattered at dawn when wildlife researcher Dr. Elena Vasquez made a discovery that would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about interspecies relationships. What she witnessed through her binoculars that morning would become one of the most extraordinary examples of compassion in the animal kingdom, proving that love knows no boundaries between species. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been tracking the movements of a pride of lions through the Maasai Mara for over 18 months as part of her doctoral research on territorial behavior. The 42-year-old behavioral ecologist from Barcelona had spent the better part of 2 decades studying big cats across 3 continents, but Kenya had become her second home. This particular morning in late September, she was positioned on a rocky outcrop overlooking the Talek River, watching the sunrise paint the grasslands in shades of gold and amber. Through her high-powered binoculars, Elena focused on a magnificent lioness she had been observing for months. Kesi, as the research team had named her, was a 7-year-old female with distinctive scars along her left flank from an old territorial dispute. Kesi had recently lost her own cubs to a coalition of nomadic males who had challenged her pride's dominant male, a tragedy Elena had documented with a heavy heart just 6 weeks earlier. What Elena saw that morning defied all logic and scientific understanding. Kesi was walking slowly across the open savanna, but she wasn't alone. Beside her, struggling to keep pace on 3 legs, was a small spotted form that didn't belong. Elena adjusted her focus, her breath catching in her throat as the image became clear. It was a young leopard cub, no more than 4 months old, with his right front leg hanging uselessly at his side. The cub was clearly injured, malnourished, and should have been either dead or abandoned by now according to every survival instinct in the wild. Instead, he was walking alongside one of nature's most formidable predators, who by all rights should have seen him as either a threat to eliminate or an easy meal. But Kesi was doing neither. Every few steps the lioness would pause, allowing the limping cub to catch up. When he stumbled, she would lower her massive head and gently nudge him back to his feet with her nose. Elena fumbled for her camera with trembling hands, knowing that without photographic evidence, no one would believe what she was witnessing. Lions and leopards were natural enemies, competing for territory and prey. Adult leopards regularly killed lion cubs when given the opportunity, and lions returned the favor without hesitation. Yet here was a grieving lioness who had apparently adopted an injured leopard cub, treating him with the same protective care she would show her own offspring. Elena carefully adjusted her telephoto lens, her heart racing as she began documenting what could potentially rewrite animal behavior textbooks. Through years of field research, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to read the subtle body language and social dynamics of big cats. What she was observing defied every established principle of predator-prey relationships and territorial competition that formed the foundation of her academic career. The injured leopard cub, whom Elena would later name Jengo after the Swahili word for building or construction, displayed behavior that was equally puzzling. Rather than showing fear or submission toward the massive lioness, he moved with a confidence that suggested familiarity and trust. His golden coat was dulled by malnutrition, and his right front leg bore clear signs of a recent fracture that had begun healing incorrectly. The way he favored the injured limb indicated the break had occurred at least 2 weeks prior, meaning he had somehow survived in this vulnerable state far longer than should have been possible for a solitary leopard cub. Elena's mind raced through possible explanations as she continued photographing the unlikely pair. Leopard cubs typically remained with their mothers until 18 months of age, learning crucial hunting and survival skills. At 4 months, Jengo should have been completely dependent on maternal care. The absence of his mother suggested either death or abandonment, both of which should have resulted in the cub's swift demise in the harsh reality of the African wilderness. Kesi's behavior was equally mystifying from a scientific perspective. The lioness had lost her own cubs just 6 weeks earlier in a violent takeover by a coalition of bachelor males, a traumatic event Elena had witnessed and documented. Standard behavioral patterns suggested Kesi should have been entering a period of recovery and preparation for her next breeding cycle. Instead, she appeared to have channeled her maternal instincts toward a natural enemy's offspring, a phenomenon with virtually no precedent in scientific literature. The most remarkable aspect was the obvious bond that had already formed between them. When Jengo fell behind due to his injury, Kesi would emit a low, rumbling call that was distinctly different from her usual vocalizations with Pride members. It was gentler, more reassuring, almost identical to the sounds lionesses make when communicating with very young cubs. Jengo responded to these calls immediately, quickening his pace despite his obvious discomfort, suggesting this relationship had been developing over several days or possibly weeks. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Elena realized she was witnessing something that could fundamentally challenge established theories about animal cognition, emotional capacity, and social flexibility in apex predators. As Elena continued her observations throughout the morning, the true extent of this unprecedented situation began to unfold. The pair's dynamic revealed layers of complexity that grew more astounding with each passing hour. When the heat of the midday sun became intense, Kesi guided Jengo to a cluster of acacia trees where she had apparently established a temporary resting area. The evidence suggested this wasn't their first day together. Scattered around the shaded area were the remains of several small kills that would have been impossible for an injured leopard cub to secure independently. A young impala fawn, barely a day old, lay partially consumed nearby. Fresh gazelle bones indicated recent feeding activity. Most remarkably, these weren't large prey items that would typically interest a full-grown lioness. Instead, they were precisely the size of kills that would be appropriate for feeding a growing cub. The hunting pattern defied everything Elena knew about lion behavior. Kesi had apparently been deliberately targeting smaller, more manageable prey that Jengo could consume easily with his injury. This required not only an understanding of the cub's physical limitations, but also a complete alteration of her natural hunting instincts. Adult lions typically focused on large ungulates that could feed multiple pride members. The energy expenditure required to hunt smaller prey repeatedly was inefficient and contradicted millions of years of evolutionary programming. Elena watched in fascination as Kesi began what appeared to be a feeding ritual. The lioness approached the partially consumed impala and used her massive paws to tear away smaller, more manageable pieces of meat. She then stepped back, allowing Jengo to approach and feed without interference. This wasn't the dominant feeding behavior typical of lion social structure, where the strongest members ate first and subordinates waited their turn. Instead, Kesi was actively facilitating the cub's access to nutrition, ensuring he received the choicest portions. The leopard cub's eating habits revealed another layer of their remarkable relationship. Despite his injury and obvious hunger, Jengo ate cautiously, frequently looking up at Kesi as if seeking permission or reassurance. His behavior suggested learned trust rather than instinctual fear. Most significantly, after eating his fill, Jengo didn't retreat to a safe distance as would be expected in a normal predator-prey dynamic. Instead, he moved closer to Kesi and began the distinctly feline behavior of head rubbing against her massive foreleg, a gesture of affection and social bonding that Elena had never witnessed between different species of big cats. Elena's radio crackled to life, interrupting her intense observation session. The voice of Dr. Marcus Webb, the lead researcher at the Maasai Mara research station, came through with barely contained excitement. Word of her preliminary radio report about the lioness and leopard cub had spread quickly through the scientific community stationed in the area, and now a team of experts was mobilizing to witness this unprecedented phenomenon firsthand. Within 3 hours, a convoy of research vehicles had arrived at Elena's observation point. Dr. Amara Ochieng, Kenya's foremost expert on big cat behavior and a professor at the University of Nairobi, stepped out of the lead vehicle carrying advanced camera equipment and behavioral analysis tools. Behind her emerged Dr. James Mitchell, a wildlife veterinarian from the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust with over 20 years of experience treating injured wildcats. The third member of the hastily assembled team was Dr. Sarah Kim, an animal psychologist specializing in interspecies relationships, who had flown in from her research station in Tanzania upon hearing Elena's initial report. Holy shit. The team quickly established a professional observation post, setting up telephoto cameras, behavioral monitoring equipment, and detailed data collection protocols. Dr. Ochieng immediately began documenting the pair's interactions using standardized ethological notation, while Dr. Mitchell assessed Jengo's injury from a distance using high-powered binoculars. His preliminary evaluation was sobering. The leopard cub's fractured leg was healing improperly, creating a permanent disability that would severely impact his survival prospects in the wild. The situation presented an ethical and scientific dilemma that the team had never encountered. Standard protocol for injured wildlife typically involved either veterinary intervention or allowing nature to take its course. However, this case defied conventional approaches. Any attempt to separate Jengo from Kesi for medical treatment could destroy the remarkable bond they had formed, and potentially doom both animals to psychological trauma. The lioness had invested significant time and energy into caring for the cub, and forcing separation could trigger a grief response that might affect her own survival instincts. Dr. Kim raised another crucial concern during their afternoon planning session. The research team's presence, while necessary for documentation, could potentially disrupt the delicate relationship they had come to study. Big cats were notoriously sensitive to human observation, and the increased activity around their territory might cause Kesi to relocate Jengo to a more remote area, making continued monitoring impossible. The scientists faced the challenging task of studying this groundbreaking behavior, while ensuring their research methods didn't inadvertently destroy the very phenomenon they hoped to understand. Dr. Cheng made a decision that would later be considered either brilliant or reckless by her peers. Rather than maintain the standard 100-meter observation distance, she proposed establishing a semi-permanent research blind much closer to Kesi and Jengo's territory. The plan required constructing a camouflaged observation shelter that would allow round-the-clock monitoring without triggering the animal's flight response. This approach violated several conventional wildlife research protocols, but the unprecedented nature of the situation demanded unprecedented methods. The construction began at dawn the following day, with local Maasai craftsmen working alongside the research team to build a structure that would blend seamlessly into the landscape. Using traditional materials including dried grasses, mud bricks, and strategically placed acacia branches, they created an observation post that appeared to be nothing more than a natural rock formation. Advanced fiber-optic cameras were embedded within the structure, providing multiple angles of observation while remaining completely invisible to the animals. The risk of this unconventional approach became apparent during the first night of monitoring. As the research team settled into their concealed positions, Kesi's behavior suggested she had detected something unusual in her territory. The lioness spent several hours investigating the area around the new observation post, her powerful nose scanning for unfamiliar scents. Dr. Mitchell held his breath as the massive predator approached within mere meters of their hiding place, her golden eyes scanning the artificial rock formation with obvious suspicion. Jengo's reaction proved to be the key to their success. The injured cub, seemingly less concerned with potential threats than his adoptive mother, began playing around the base of the observation blind. His playful behavior included pouncing at insects, rolling in the dust, and even attempting to climb the carefully constructed walls with his 3 functioning legs. This carefree display appeared to reassure Kesi that the structure posed no immediate danger, and she gradually resumed her normal routine. The breakthrough came on the 3rd night, when Dr. Kim witnessed something that challenged every assumption about animal emotional capacity. Through the infrared monitoring equipment, she observed Kesi engaging in what could only be described as deliberate physical therapy with Jengo. The lioness used her massive paws to gently manipulate the cub's injured leg, applying pressure and movement that mimicked professional rehabilitation techniques. Most remarkably, she seemed to understand that Jengo's pain responses indicated when to stop and when to continue, adjusting her approach based on his vocalizations and body language. Wundu Sowundu. Over the following weeks, the research team documented a gradual but remarkable transformation in both animals. Jengo's injured leg, while still visibly impaired, began showing improved mobility under Kesi's consistent care. The young leopard's overall condition improved dramatically as regular feeding and protection allowed his body to dedicate energy to healing rather than mere survival. His coat regained its lustrous spotted pattern, and his playful behavior increased noticeably with each passing day. The most extraordinary development was Jengo's apparent adoption of lion social behaviors. Dr. Kim observed him attempting to mimic Kesi's hunting postures, despite his physical limitations and species-specific instincts. The cub would crouch low in the grass beside the lioness, his tail twitching in concentration as he watched her stalk prey. While his natural leopard instincts favored solitary ambush tactics, Jengo was learning cooperative hunting techniques that were completely foreign to his species, but essential to lion survival. Kesi's transformation was equally profound, but manifested in different ways. The lioness began displaying maternal behaviors that were far more intensive than those typically observed in lions, caring for their own offspring. She would spend hours grooming Jengo with her massive rough tongue, a process that appeared both nurturing and essential for the cub's psychological development. The bonding ritual extended to play sessions where Kesi would carefully moderate her strength to avoid injuring her fragile adoptive son. The relationship attracted attention from other members of Kesi's pride, creating unexpected social dynamics. Two younger lionesses, sisters named Asha and Zuri by the research team, initially approached the pair with obvious curiosity and confusion. Their body language suggested recognition that Jengo was not a lion cub, yet his integration into Kesi's daily routine appeared to grant him protected status within the group's social hierarchy. Dr. Oching noted that neither female showed aggressive behavior toward the leopard cub, instead treating him with the cautious respect typically reserved for cubs belonging to dominant pride members. The most significant challenge came when the pride's adult male, a massive lion the researchers called Simba, returned from a territorial patrol. Male lions were known to kill cubs that weren't their biological offspring, and the introduction of a leopard cub into the pride dynamic represented an entirely unprecedented scenario. The research team prepared for a potential tragedy as the 400-pound male approached Kesi and her unusual charge, their cameras ready to document what might be Jengo's final moments. The confrontation between Simba and Jengo unfolded over several tense hours that tested every theoretical framework the research team possessed about lion social dynamics. As the massive male approached, Kesi positioned herself protectively between him and the young leopard, her body language conveying a message that transcended species barriers. Her stance was neither submissive nor aggressive, but rather carried the unmistakable authority of a mother defending her young. Simba's initial reaction was one of obvious confusion and territorial concern. He circled the pair at a distance, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his golden coat as he processed this unprecedented situation. The scent markers around Jengo clearly identified him as leopard, yet the cub's integration into Kesi's routine and the lioness's protective behavior created a complex social puzzle that challenged the male's instinctual responses. Dr. Mitchell observed through the monitoring equipment as Jengo made a decision that demonstrated remarkable intelligence and social awareness. Rather than hiding behind Kesi or attempting to flee, the young leopard slowly approached the intimidating male lion, his injured leg causing him to move with deliberate, non-threatening steps. The cub's approach was accompanied by submissive body language, including lowered head posture and soft vocalizations that seemed designed to communicate his non-aggressive intentions. The breakthrough moment came when Jengo performed a behavior that stunned every researcher present. The leopard cub began exhibiting the classic lion greeting ritual of head rubbing, approaching Simba with the same gesture of respect and submission that lion cubs typically displayed toward adult pride members. This cross-species adoption of lion social protocols suggested a level of behavioral adaptation that challenged existing understanding of animal learning capabilities. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Simba's response defied every prediction the research team had made. After several minutes of careful observation and scent investigation, the massive male allowed Jengo to complete the greeting ritual. More remarkably, Simba responded with a gentle head nudge that acknowledged the cub's submission without displaying any signs of aggression or rejection. The interaction lasted less than 5 minutes, but its implications for understanding animal cognition and social flexibility would occupy researchers for years to come. The acceptance by the pride's dominant male transformed Jengo's status from protected outsider to provisional pride member. Over the subsequent days, the research team documented the young leopard participating in group activities, sleeping arrangements, and even territorial patrols, always maintaining his respectful position within the established hierarchy while gradually earning acceptance from each pride member through consistent demonstration of appropriate social behaviors. 6 months into their extraordinary relationship, the research team faced a heartbreaking development that would test the strength of the bond between Kesi and Jengo. During the dry season, when water sources became scarce and prey animals migrated to distant grazing areas, the pride was forced to undertake long-distance hunts that required covering dozens of kilometers across challenging terrain. Jengo's injured leg, while significantly improved through Kesi's care, simply could not handle the grueling pace required for these extended expeditions. The dilemma created an agonizing choice for Kesi between her loyalty to the pride's survival needs and her commitment to the leopard cub she had raised as her own. Dr. Kim documented the lioness's internal struggle through days of restless behavior, where she would begin following the pride on hunting expeditions only to return repeatedly to check on Jengo, who had been left behind in the relative safety of their established territory. During one particularly critical hunt, when the pride had been absent for 3 days pursuing a migrating wildebeest herd, Jengo demonstrated the depth of his transformation and intelligence. Rather than remaining passively in the territory, waiting for Kesi's return, the young leopard began exhibiting hunting behaviors he had never been taught by his own species. Using techniques he had observed from months of watching lion hunting strategies, Jengo successfully captured a young dik-dik, his first independent kill since his injury. The achievement represented far more than simple survival. Jengo had adapted leopard ambush instincts to incorporate lion cooperative hunting concepts, creating a unique hybrid approach that compensated for his physical limitations. Dr. Ochiang's analysis of the hunt, captured through remote cameras, showed the cub using terrain advantages and wind patterns in ways that demonstrated sophisticated planning and execution capabilities that exceeded what was previously documented in leopard cubs of his age. When Kesi returned from the extended hunt, her reaction to Jengo's independence marked another pivotal moment in their relationship. Rather than resuming her intensive caregiving, the lioness began treating the young leopard with a new level of respect that acknowledged his growing capabilities. She maintained their close bond while gradually encouraging more autonomous behavior, striking a delicate balance between protection and preparation for eventual independence. The transformation in their dynamic became most apparent during feeding situations. Instead of providing pre-killed prey, Kesi began bringing Jengo live but injured small animals, allowing him to practice his killing techniques while ensuring his safety. This teaching method, typically reserved for biological offspring approaching independence, demonstrated her recognition of his need to develop survival skills despite their interspecies relationship. 18 months after Elena's initial discovery, an event occurred that would provide the ultimate test of the extraordinary bond between the unlikely pair. Kesi, now 8 years old, found herself facing a life-threatening crisis when a coalition of 3 nomadic males invaded the pride's territory with violent intentions. These bachelor lions, driven by instinct to claim new territory and eliminate potential rivals, posed an immediate danger not only to Kesi but to every member of her adopted family. The attack came at dawn during the vulnerable transition period when the pride was scattered across their territory for morning hunting. Simba, despite his impressive size and strength, was outnumbered and caught off guard by the coordinated assault from the younger, more aggressive males. The battle was fierce and brutal, with the outcome uncertain as the established pride male fought desperately to protect his territory and family. During the chaos of the confrontation, Kesi became separated from the main pride and found herself trapped in a rocky outcrop with limited escape routes. One of the invading males, a scarred veteran of numerous territorial battles, had cornered her in a narrow canyon where her superior local knowledge of the terrain meant nothing. The lioness was exhausted from the prolonged chase, and her opponent was fresh, determined, and significantly larger than she was. In this moment of mortal danger, Jengo made a decision that defied every instinct of his leopard heritage. Rather than following the typical feline response of seeking high ground and safety, the young leopard descended from his elevated position and positioned himself between Kesi and her attacker. His presence created a crucial distraction at the exact moment when the lioness needed it most. The invading male's confusion at seeing a leopard defending a lion provided Kesi with the split-second opportunity she needed to counterattack. Using the rocky terrain to her advantage and fueled by desperation, she launched herself at her opponent with renewed strength. The battle was brief but decisive, with Kesi's experience and intimate knowledge of the terrain ultimately proving superior to her attacker's raw power. Jengo's intervention, while lasting only moments, had been the critical factor that saved Kesi's life. The young leopard had repaid the debt of protection and care that the lioness had provided during his most vulnerable period. Their relationship had come full circle, evolving from caregiver and dependent to mutual protectors willing to risk everything for each other's survival. The victory over the invading coalition marked a turning point that neither the research team nor the animals themselves could have anticipated. In the aftermath of the territorial battle, Jengo's heroic intervention had earned him unprecedented respect not just from Kesi, but from every surviving member of the pride. The young leopard was no longer seen as an unusual adoptee, but as a full family member who had proven his loyalty in the most extreme circumstances possible. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now in her third year of documenting this extraordinary relationship, witnessed the final chapter of Jengo's integration when he participated in his first major pride hunt as an equal partner. His unique hybrid hunting style, combining leopard stealth with lion cooperation, made him an invaluable asset to the group's survival strategy. The injured cub who once struggled to walk had become a formidable hunter, whose disability had transformed into a distinctive advantage. Today, 5 years after that fateful morning discovery, Jengo remains with Kesi's pride as a permanent member. He has never attempted to establish his own territory or seek out other leopards, instead choosing the family that saved his life over the call of his species' solitary nature. Kesi, now a grandmother to several new cubs, continues to share her wisdom with Jengo, who has become an uncle figure to the pride's youngest members. Their story has revolutionized scientific understanding of animal emotional capacity and social flexibility, inspiring conservation efforts across Africa. The research data collected from their relationship has contributed to new rehabilitation programs for orphaned big cats and changed policies regarding interspecies animal care. What started as a moment of compassion became a testament to love's ability to transcend every boundary nature creates. Kesi and Jengo proved that family isn't defined by species, but by the willingness to sacrifice everything for those we love. If this incredible story of loyalty and love moved you, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more amazing tales of animal compassion that will restore your faith in the natural world's capacity for extraordinary bonds.